Time has a way of settlin' the score, especially out on the rough-and-tumble Texas frontier. This here land was dubbed the Wild West for a reason. Law and order were as swift as a rattlesnake's strike. When a wrong was done, and a fellow was sent 6 feet under, the thirst for justice came ridin' hard and fast, usually endin' with a rope round someone's neck. 1840 was the year when Captain Banta got schooled in the ways of frontier justice. He learned how quick it could be dished out, the importance of protectin' what's yours, and that if you don't stand tall for yourself, ain't nobody else will.
Sometime in the spring of 1840, Mr. Slocum was slain, and some of his prized horses were stolen in the neighborhood. 4 men were suspected: Old Man Faulkner, his 2 eldest sons, and a man named Hill. The citizens met and sent out men and had them arrested. 12 men were selected to listen to the evidence. The witnesses examined as usual, and the case decided without the usual pleading of lawyers. In the case of Old Man Faulkner, it seemed to be conclusive from the evidence that he was guilty. But in the case of his 2 sons, it was not so clear. The 12 men argued and had some doubt as to their guilt. However, they decided to hang all of them. The execution was to take place at 2 p.m. the next day, being Friday. They were to hang them on Page's Limb, a hanging tree half a mile from Clarksville. There stood a blackjack tree with large projecting branches, on which a man by the name of Page had been hanged some time before. It was afterwards called Page's Limb. On it 4 unfortunate men were doomed to hang. Ropes were loosely laid around their throats, and they were marched to the place of execution at the set time. The old man was the first to be escorted to the scaffold, which was a wagon. He was asked if he had anything to say. He kept silent, but he just glared at the crowd. At the word given, the wagon was moved. The old man Faulkner fell, dangling in the air, soon passed from life to eternity. As soon as he was pronounced dead, he was cut down and laid out under another part of the tree. The heart-rendering moans and cries from his bereaved wife and children were heard. The large crowd that stood by could not help shedding tears. It was decided to hang Hill next. He was the next oldest. After the excitement had somewhat subsided, Hill was led to the wagon, with a rope laid loosely about his neck. He ascended to the middle of the wagon with firm steps, but a pensive countenance. As soon as he had reached the platform, and in presence of at least 250 people, the hangman said, "Mr. Hill, do you want to be heard before you die?" He said he did. The response from the crowd was, "You shall have time to speak. Say on." Before giving his speech, I will say Hill was a fine-looking young man, well-dressed, fair complexion, dark hair, and eyes of a sparkling gray or maybe hazel. Mr. Hill said, "Ladies and gentlemen, while it is my fate to stand before you condemned to die, I feel thankful to God that you have been kind enough to allow me a short time to address those around me, especially those young men who have come out to see these men executed for an alleged crime. While I am not afraid to die and meet the great judge, I do feel that I have done many little wrongs in my life, but as for the murder of any man, I am clear. Of course, I have no chance to prove my innocence of the charges preferred here against me, unless I had time to get my witnesses from Arkansas, who will testify that I ate dinner with him and his family on the day of the attack I am charged with. some 80 miles from where the murder was committed. But I must hasten on with what I want to say. I am now 21 years and 13 days old. My mother is a widow. My father died when I was but 8 years old. My mother lives in the southern part of Missouri and has 6 children in all. I am the oldest of the family. I left home when I was 19, came to Texas to hunt for work. I did not know anybody. Eventually, was hired by Mr. Faulkner to work for him 5 months ago at $20 per month. I took a horse, saddle and bridle at $50, a suit of clothes at $20. With $30 in money left, I started home to my mother 5 days before the murder of Slocum, and on the same day of the murder, I took dinner with a man named Davis in Arkansas. I was followed and arrested before I got home to give my mother the money. The only evidence against me is that I had worked for Faulkner before the murder was committed. Give me time, and I can prove I started out 5 days before the murder, and on the day of the murder was 80 miles away. I know I have committed petty thefts in the past, but as for murder, I am clear. During his speech, the crowd of citizens listened attentively, and before he was done speaking, some of the bystanders hallooed, "Take him down! He shall have a chance to prove his innocence." Others cried out, "Hang the rascal!" The people being divided in sentiment, it was agreed to leave it to a vote, and as soon as the tumult was over, a vote was taken, and a majority was for giving Hill time to prove his innocence. So he was brought down, and granted time to send and get his witnesses. Young Caleb Faulkner was then called out. His reply was, "I did not take any hand in the murder, although I was there when Slocum was killed." Hill was not there at the time of the murder. He had been gone several days. "We did not know my father intended to kill Slocum at the time." "How old are you?" "I am 18. I will be 19 in August." "What were you doing out with your father when Slocum was killed?" "I went with him to get some horses. My pa told Ethan and we needed to go with him to get some horses from the Slocum farm. We didn't know the arrangement they had made. We were told to go, and we went. On the way, I asked my father what if Slocum decides not to sell. Pa got mad, and he said he would see reason. He then said he had the coin, but we found out later he didn't. He was going to go to Slocum farm and take those horses. We didn't know he had planned to kill him. A vote was taken on his and his brother's case, which resulted in both being acquitted of the charges until further evidence could be obtained, which never happened. Both Caleb and Ethan Faulkner went home and lived with his mother and made a good citizen as long as I knew. As for Hill, he got his witnesses in time to prove himself innocent of the murder case. He later would lecture the young men, anyone in hearing distance, a stark warning to flee bad company, to get an education, and stay at home until you decide to settle down for life. Hill made a good citizen of Red River County, owned land near Clarksville, married and raised a respectable family. He often would tell his boys how he nearly hung on circumstantial evidence.
Life on the frontier was tough and unforgiving, but it also had a way of teaching hard lessons. The frontier demanded a certain code: integrity, respect, community, and stewardship of the land. Thanks for watching another Banta story. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, and comment.